In this lesson, we're going to take a look at some of the new attributes defined on input controls in HTML5. These allow you to specify more tightly what kind of input the user is expected to provide. So the sample document is called input-control-attributes.html. I've already opened the file in Komodo Edit, so let's take a look at it now. So I have some styles defined at the top, and I have a function that would be called when I click the submit button on the form. So let me skim over that just for now, and then take you further on into the actual form itself. So first of all, we have a field here where the user is meant to enter their name, and it has a couple of new attributes that you might have not seen before. First of all, we have an attribute called autofocus, so that when the form is displayed, it'll automatically put the input focus in that text box. You might have noticed in Chrome, the first text box here automatically has the input focus. Autocomplete off, that's a boolean. You can set it to be on or off. The default is actually on. If you set it to off, then it won't give the user any hints about what to enter in the text box. So if they've already entered text similar previously, it won't display that text automatically. So the user has to type it all in again. Quite useful as well is the placeholder attribute. The placeholder attribute displays text inside the text box. So it's quite a nice way to give the user another hint about what to expect. So enter your name is the placeholder text that appears in the text box. And as you can see, I've provided placeholder text for all my input controls in this example. You can also specify whether the text must be entered when you submit the form. Required true or false. The default is false. So if you set true, the browser will actually give you some sort of indicator if you forget to enter that data when you try to submit the form. So let me take you back into the editor. If I forget to enter my name in this text box here and click submit, you can see Chrome has displayed this error message. Each browser has its own user interface mechanism there, but they will all give you some sort of warning, and it'll stop submitting the form until you actually enter your name. Okay, now if I click submit, it would work. As it so happens, only the name is required. All the other fields are optional in this example. Okay, let's go back into the editor and see what else we have. So on the house number, let's take a look at this one here. The house number allows me to enter the house number that I live in. I live in number 4. It's just simple text here. There's also an input control which allows you to enter numeric data. But a house number might be something like 4A or 4B. It might be something other than just a number. So I just simply display a placeholder here to give the user a hint about what to enter. Now the next one is more interesting. This allows me to enter a postcode. So there's a pattern attribute in HTML5 which allows you to fine-tune the expression type that the user must enter. The regular expression syntax here means in a UK postcode, you have to enter 1 or 2 letters, like SA, followed by 1 or 2 digits, followed by a space character, followed by 1 digit, followed by 2 letters. That represents a valid UK postcode, I think. So if I go back into my browser, I'll enter my house number 4. My postcode is this one, actually, SA35BR. So that's valid. If I click submit, then we see that it likes that. The form submission completed correctly. However, if I entered something invalid, let's say I entered 3 digits here and tried to click submit, then we get an error message. Again, the format of the error message is browser dependent, but you will get some sort of validation there which will stop the form from being submitted to the server. So that's quite nice. Next up, we have 2 entries which allow you to select my country of birth and my country of residence. So this illustrates the ability to select an item from a list. If I just skim down a little further in the example, on line 79, I've set up a data list. You can think of this as being like a non-visual list. You can set up the data for your list without actually displaying it. So these are the countries that make up the United Kingdom. I have a data list called countries. And here, in my input control where I select my country of birth, what you do is you use the list attribute and you point it to your data list countries. So the list will automatically be populated with the items from this data list. So do that for my country of birth, and I also do it for my country of residence. And this is quite a good example of when to use this feature. If you want to use the same list in several input controls, then define it in one place like this, and then you can refer to it multiple times like I've done here. Now, unfortunately, Chrome doesn't support this yet. So to illustrate that, I'm going to use Opera. So I can select my country of birth here, Wales, and my country of residence, well, I live in Wales still, but I used to live in England, so I could delete that and select England. Okay, and then if I click submit, well, actually, I'll enter my name first, Andy, and then I'll click submit. So Andy, house number, postcode, birth country is Wales, residence country used to be England, and that's that example in Opera. Okay, so the last thing I wanted to show you was the ability to select multiple files. We have an input control type called file, and it allows you to click a browse button and select multiple files, for example, that you might want to upload to a server. So when you set the type equal file, if you then select the multiple attribute is Boolean, so you can either say multiple, or you can say multiple equals multiple if you prefer. Okay, I'll just leave it as it was because that's a more concise syntax. So it'll allow the user to select multiple files which they could then upload to the server. So if I go into Chrome, I could click choose files, and I could select various different files from anywhere on the file system, and then I'll click submit. Remember to correct my postcode, like so, and submit. So here we go. So it tells me there were two files selected. There's one file, it tells me the file size as well, and the file name, and there's the other one. Okay, so the code that does that is up above in the onSubmit function. So it gets the element where I selected all the files. The element has a files property. That's a list of file objects which I can get the length of. So I selected two files. I can then iterate through those two files. And each file is stored in a variable here, just to make the syntax easier. And I display a message that says, this is the file name. So there's a file name property on the file object, plus a file size property too. So that concludes the lesson. We've seen various different ways in which you can control the user input, and we've seen the kind of visual feedback that you get from the browser when the user gets it wrong.